It seems like there's a new way for brands to interact with us every day. In the United States, brands have established communication methods available to interact with their customers. However, countries with emerging markets have unique challenges. In this episode of UpTech Report, we speak with Javier Mata, CEO of Yalochat. Javier saw an opportunity in these emerging markets where brands can integrate with existing communication platforms their customers are already using. Yellow uses WhatsApp, WeChat, and Facebook Messenger to allow large brands like Coca-Cola, Amazon, and Walmart to talk to their customers at scale using AI in Latin America, India, and China. Javier is from Latin America himself. He saw the need in his country and applied it to countries with similar markets. We discussed some of the challenges he has faced when bringing Yellow's AI and CRM solutions to newer markets and his exciting growth plans. Javier, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to hear more about Yalochat and kind of how it started, where it's going, and the way you are constantly innovating. To start us off, what year did you start your company?
We started the end of 2015, beginning of 2016.
And what industry do you primarily focus on and serve?
So we serve primarily four industries, which is consumer packaged goods, retail, financial services, and travel and hospitality. And if I could categorize all of them into one, is large enterprises that usually interact with a lot of people and are in deep need of making those connections more personable and more intelligent.
Now, where are you joining us today from? Where's your headquarters based out of right now?
So we have offices in many different places. Today you find me in our Mexico City office.
Well, you travel all the time.
But we're always travel, yes. Next week I'm going to be in India, so.
Wow. How big is your team right now?
We have grown more than, we started the year and it has grown more than, four times? In the last couple of months.
Just a little bit of growth, just the last couple of months?
Yes.
Holy moly. All right. So you've identified four markets that you're focused on, these industries. What's the pain point that you are solving with your solution?
Yeah. So for large organizations, for large enterprises that serve millions of people, it is very difficult to make the service that they're offering or the products that they're offering personalized and to make those connections more meaningful. But that is the expectation that nowadays the customer has. It's no longer about customer centricity. It's about being relationship centric, which is going a step beyond and saying not only the product works for you and is built thinking about you, but we also understand your likes, your wants, and we're able to communicate in a personalized way with you. That is an expectation that the customers nowadays have, but large organizations have trouble providing those type of services and those type of recommendations. So, and that is primarily because of systems. Until now, they had old legacy, they still have old legacy systems that kind of force the customer to connect with them in their ways and not necessarily in the ways of the customer. So what we did is channels like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, where customers are spending 84% of their time that they're on the phone, we're connecting those systems with these channels where the people already are, and providing a layer of artificial intelligence to make those interactions smarter and more personalized.
So you're able to help these enterprises meet their customer where they are, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, and have those communications and make more sales right where they already are.
That is correct.
Wow. So AI is a component of this ability to have interactions, communication that sounds conversational and realistic. Tell me a bit more about your IP and the technology behind that.
Yes. So large part of what makes this work is always start with focusing on the customer and understanding their needs. So since the beginning, we been thinking more along the lines of, okay, what do companies need in order to run on top of messaging platforms and create these connections with their customers? And not necessarily, here's the AI that we created, let's see where we put it. And what that has allowed us to build throughout time is different components that overall make the experience good. And I would say it's three fundamental components. One is the AI brain that allows you to, well, at the end is pattern recognition, so it allows you to personalize those connections. The other part is a CRM, which maintains the context and the information on the customer so that you can personalize. So it's not only the AI, but the AI combined with who you are in that way. And the third one is a very robust integration system that allows us to connect with the backend of the customers. Because you might be able to know that you typically travel to Japan, and that is the place that you enjoy the most for your vacations. We might even know what type of food you want and what type of experiences you enjoy. We're able to craft the conversation so that it is more geared towards you in terms of AI. But if we don't have an integration with the backend of the airline to be able to give you the flight that you need, it is not going to work. So I would say that the combination of those three is what makes this functional, what makes this meaningful.
So the AI using probably some sort of natural language processing or understanding, so understands context and ability to communicate out then to the customer. Your CRM keeping and storing all the database of the customer and what they like and their wants, their desires, and this integration, is this really then to your enterprise customers, the ability to integrate with their platform so that their customers can talk back and forth, or is it integrations with other platforms as well?
It's both. On the, let's say, first stage is integration with their own system so that the job can get done. And then it becomes about expansion, because now that you have this conversation going on, you're able to personalize it, you're able to service the customer, there might already be wanting some other services that you're able to connect. And that is possible. And I think a big advantage of having a conversational interface versus, let's say, an application is that for every change that you make in the functionality in an application, you need to develop a new front end. Whereas in a conversation, for every change that you make, you just basically need to handle this new API. But it is way more simple. You don't need to deal with front ends.
Got it. So big win there. How many customers do you have right now?
We have grown very quickly over the last, over the last year. I would say that up until Q3, Q4 of last year, we were more focused on few customers and just getting the product right. And we got that on Q4. So now the demand has grown tremendously. We're operating across Latin America, India, Southeast Asia, with many brands such as Amazon, Coca-Cola. We're talking about large brands that are running now on top of our platform.
Would you say the fact that you're heavily focused in Latin America and India and these other places that they use WhatsApp and WeChat and want to interact much more than, United States, and the ability for them to make sales or conversations on there, are they more advanced than, would you say, the US or other places? Or what's your thoughts on that perspective?
Yes, I'm glad you're asking that question. Yes, I think as technology evolves, you generate certain infrastructure and certain ways of operating. So when we look at the US and Europe, even Japan, there are already established ways that are somewhat efficient, might not be the most efficient, but are somewhat efficient and get the job done. So it's very fragmented. When you think about the US, you have Messenger, you have iMessage, you have email, you have the applications, you have the website, you have the call centers, and all of them kind of work. And when that happens, when you're trying to bring something that does work better, you're fighting for the attention of all the customers and some preconceived notions. Latin America, emerging markets in general, proposes some sort of tabla rosa, like starting from scratch in that sense, where there aren't that many developed channels to communicate with companies. So the moment you open the messaging app where you're interacting with all of your friends all of the time, and now you say, hey, now you can communicate with companies here. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for the company, and it's a no-brainer for the user, which we believe is more important, right? The company might believe something, but at the end of the day, the user is the one who dictates what is going to happen.
So you're opening a channel effectively for enterprise companies to reach their customer in these emerging countries where they already are, versus the US or Europe or Japan, as you're saying, there's tons of established ways that enterprise companies can already reach the customer. So it's only a little bit better versus emerging countries.
It might be 50% better, right? But when you compare that to 10 or 20x better, that is sufficient to completely shift the market. And it's something that if we go to China, we see, right? We see a lot of people engaging with companies over WeChat. And the same effect happened.
For enterprises, your focus at the moment, would you expand to beyond enterprise as well? Do you have thoughts or ideas or plans for that?
We're fully focused on enterprises for now because we see that those are the companies that are facing the biggest need. Because you're talking about changing expectations from customers, losing market share from smaller, nimbler players that are able to personalize that because they haven't reached the scale that they have. So you have all these micro brands taking away market share from these big players. And this is their way of maintaining that relevance and at the end providing a better service and better products.
What's a hurdle, a problem that you've faced in the last year or two that you've had to overcome that maybe other entrepreneurs or those who are thinking of running their own business that they could learn from?
Yes, every day, many times a day. So I just think it's part of the entrepreneurial life. And one of the key things is just understanding that is part of that. And knowing that, okay, you need to face the problem and you need to work with it. So that is part of, I would say, more a general philosophy. And if we go on to something more specific, I think that the biggest hurdle for every leader at every growing company is your own psychology and what you believe is possible and what you believe is achievable, and understanding that there are many things that you don't know that you don't know. So I think having the confidence in your vision to execute, but at the same time being able to question and to build a team around you that is experienced and is able to bridge those gaps definitely allows you to fast forward in the growth. And we've seen that, in sales. I hadn't done enterprise sales before, right? So that experience, it was about assembling a team, learning, talking to people that had done it before. And then you started seeing contracts changing in terms, in size, in the rapidness of closing, all of those things. So again, it's about taking that approach as you go along and face different problems.
I'm glad that you highlight that specific example, because I was going to ask, what was harder to create, your AI and CRM solution, or selling to enterprise, like being able to go into that? Like, what was the harder solution? But it sounds like the people is really the solution of who you hire to help accomplish those, solve the problems.
Definitely. And I mean, I think there's no one size fits all. Like, each company has its own problems, and depending on the stage, the industry, what you're going after, there are different solutions. But yes, in our particular case, I mean, all of us not all of us now, but at the beginning, all of us came from consumer. Our previous companies were all about consumer, so we didn't know about enterprise. And I think that was a blessing, because we created a product that was more, thoughtful in how to serve the enterprise. And okay, the experience needs to be good. That's just a basic principle when you're creating consumer products and not enterprise products. So that approach in the product, in the technology that we built, is what provided us with a very solid technology stack. And then we were able to complement that with experienced salespeople on the enterprise side, that now we have combined the approach, which is, okay, it's product-led growth combined with enterprise sales, and it works really well.
Where do you see your company in 5 years from now?
5 years from now, yes, I think the pace at where things are changing nowadays is really hard to predict. So I'm probably gonna be utterly wrong to say like exactly this is how it's gonna look like, because everything is changing. And just in terms of our product, to give you an idea, we have evolved it 3 times this year, and it's still serving, right? But we're constantly challenging and changing that. So what is it that we're trying to do here? Let me talk to you about that. We see that companies engage with millions of users all of the time, and right now, because of a lack of a proper system, because of a lack of intelligence from the system's perspective, those experiences are not great, and you probably have experienced that many times. So what we want to do, and our goal for the next 5 years, is to be helping more than 1 billion people on a monthly basis have a delightful experiences with the companies that we provide software to. And that is, our goal, and what we're working on, and what we're counting every day, and moving in that direction.
More than 1 billion users on a monthly basis.
Yeah,
that's
making
awesome.
The day of more than 1 billion people on a monthly basis, because we see that turning, customers that might be dissatisfied right now into raving fans of the company, that you say, wow, I'm really happy to be interacting with this company. It's our way of contributing in this space.
To realize this vision of more than 1 billion people that you're able to serve, what hurdles do you see that you're going to need to overcome to accomplish that?
I think the biggest one is here, right? It's always about the psychology and what you believe is possible. So that, it's a constant work on that aspect. And I think for every entrepreneur is that, because at the end of the day, the technology to do it is there. The method of doing it is there. So all of those things we're continuously figuring out, but we know how to get there. At the end of the day, it's a very simple recipe. Is providing a delightful experience, in measuring on a constant basis and improving that, and being customer obsessed in two dimensions, or I would say in three dimensions. The first dimension is we see each other inside of the company as customers. Those are the first ones that we need to bring hospitality and good experiences to, because we're creating the software, we're creating the experiences, and it becomes a reflection of the people inside of the organization. The second one is our customers, let's say our paying customers, the enterprises. So adding value to them on a consistent basis, and we're proud that we get to make the champions inside the organization really champions, and whenever they implement our technology, it's like, okay, now your area is the rock star. And that makes us very happy. And I would say the third one is the users, the end users. Because at the end of the day, a company might buy your product, you might have a really good sales team that is able to sell the product. But if the end user is not having a great experience, it is not going to work long term. So we obsess a lot about what is going on at the end of that value chain. And that's what we're constantly measuring and saying, all right, like the person got the job done, the person is happy with the experience, the person is coming back. And we even see that this becomes more of a user experience as a service type of thing.
As you mentioned earlier, that trying to imagine 5 years from now, it's hard because things are changing so much, even just this year alone in innovating. How are you personally staying on top and innovating? Where do you look for your news and new thoughts and ideas?
Everywhere and in the most random places. So I think it's easy to fall into tech, that you just bubble and you're hearing what everyone is thinking at the same time. So I think it's important. I think Twitter is a good way of just staying involved in that conversation and what is going on there. But then the other aspect is, I think more and more the world is getting a bit more disconnected and people are looking for more connections. And that might not be found inside the technology bubble. So going into very opposite directions in that sense and talking to people that have nothing to do with technology oftentimes creates the best ideas, because you're talking, for example, to a Buddhist monk and they're telling you about the concept of being and the way you perceive yourself and the stories that you create, and then you're like, wow, how does that relate to a neural network that we could kind of emulate that part? And how can we make the connections that we're doing with people through our service more personal in one sense, but then understanding also the limitations of technology and even incentivizing people to get out, leave your phone, like connect with the people that are around you, you're traveling. And if you start thinking along those lines, I think it's something that resounds more with where the world is going and what people are looking for. So it's kind of like having those, heavy tech and geek out, and then go completely the other side and find there, and somewhere in the middle, you'll start combining those ideas, and that's how I tend to stay on top. Just now, we had a Buddhist professor talking here at the office in Mexico about psychology and philosophy and all of this that generates very interesting dialogues that then lead to new ideas.
You blow my mind just from both sides. I love how you go all the way, tech side, sure, we'll look in Twitter. That's a great tip and see what people are saying, but completely the opposite. People who have nothing to do with technology. How are they connecting with others and applying it? Last question.
And going, in that sense, sometimes, and I think India, Mexico, just going and disconnecting for 10, 15 days, and being with people. And you realize how even in terms of building a team, sometimes this is the missing element. You're saying, okay, we're going after this goal. And the moment you bring this humanity back into like the workplace, people are a lot more engaged in this, right? Because then it's like we're all in this working together, and we recognize each other humanity, and it's just not just like, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing or why I'm here, but I'm doing it, and we're all racing towards it. And it leads to overall better results.
For this last question, are there any books, audiobooks, podcasts that you like to listen to, or listening to, or reading right now?
Let's see. That I would recommend.
Yes.
Yes, there are different ones. So I think from the AI perspective, whoever hasn't read it, but Live 3.0, it's very, very good. And it just, you kind of like go all into AI and all the possibilities. It gets crazy towards the end, but it's a good geeking out on what AI could potentially become. And then the other one is more along other lines. There's a book called Improv, that it's about improvisation and the theater. So it's written by a playwright. Very interesting, like nothing to do with technology, but at the same time is how they're able to create environments where people are constantly improvising and coming up with new ideas that applies very much into what we do every day. And it goes down to how you're able to play with different emotions, interactions, and elicit just by the questions or the environment, new creative ideas. And it's completely a different field, but it's interesting that it applies.
I'd never thought of improv, the skills of improv being used for business and marketing and ideas around that. That's brilliant. I'll have to look at that.
Yes, very much recommended. And it's a fun book to read. And when you're done reading it, yes, you'll start behaving in a different way, because they get very deep into human interaction. It's fascinating.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.